You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network.
اليمين هناك لشوارزنيجر
Gaucho. Ya lo hacen. Pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! 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 ¡Golazo!
This is Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio, your new live show about the beautiful game in all its glory, with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. MLS, EPL, La Liga, Champions League, all is fair game. Powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us at sportspodcastingnetwork.com.
Happy Friday. Kevin, how you doing?
I am doing great. It's been a while. I haven't thanked Grant for Friday, but thank you, Grant, for this beautiful, overcast and wet kind of day.
Yeah, it's been a long week here in Toronto for me. A lot of work on the side, as people know that I have started a new journey on that front. But it's we're trying to balance it with soccer today. Unfortunately, I got called in, couldn't schedule it around it yesterday, but that's going to happen from time to time. But Kevin aptly filled in. We thank him for that. We got an exciting show today, though, I think, and it's going to be one for you development geeks out there. And I think that's kind of our bread and butter in a lot of ways. Some of these stories that get underreported anyway elsewhere. And we have a guest on, Chris Cerroni from BC Soccer. He's the director of soccer there, director of soccer operations there. He joined me last night to talk about the BC D3 League that will be starting in 2018. Lots of your questions that you sent me on Twitter and that were answered in that interview, and I look forward to having you listen to that, which will come at 20 to the hour. We're going to run it at the end of the show rather than the start of the show. Because it has interest to BC, so we wanted to push it as far into the show as possible, Kevin. Before we do any of that, any final thoughts for you on the weekend, or any thoughts on the D3 League that you want to share? Get in there before the interview.
No, we'll listen to Chris later on. I'm just happy for Canadian soccer players, growing soccer players, the ones that are growing. Yeah, they're all growing. But the ones that are developing right now, that are maybe 16, 17, the league that's coming in 2018 will be a place where they can get their skills acute, where they can become professional players, and it will be a great pathway. We've seen League One come with great success, with a lot of players recruiting in NCAA and further up on the pyramid of North American soccer. PLSQ with some result as well, but the three leagues together can push themselves, and that's what I'm kind of hoping it does.
Yeah, fair enough. And again, Chris will be on in the last segment. Quick little thoughts I want to send out. We do have some Australian listeners out there. Of course, some terrible events in Melbourne last night. Just some quick thoughts on there. I'm not going to dwell on them, and hopefully the world will get a safer place sooner rather than later. But, we all know what's happening today, and we'll leave that well enough alone. Let's talk about Halifax now. The city of Halifax, not in England, the one in Canada, in Nova Scotia. Some interesting news last night out of the municipal council meeting, or the regional council meeting. Not often that we talk about regional council meetings, but nonetheless, there was a tender put forward. And if you don't know what a tender is, and I'm not going to assume everyone does, it's that when you look for people to bid to build a project for you, city does, blind bids usually. A tender was put forward for the building of a soccer/rugby facility, a new one in the region of Halifax, that area around the capital of Nova Scotia. This, of course, has a lot of people speculating that this is part of the Canadian Premier League bid, Kevin. I think I've said my piece on Halifax in the Maritimes before. I have lived out there, so I add that insight to it. But Kevin, what are your thoughts on the possibility of Halifax being part of this new journey that the CSA is undertaking?
It's a market, or markets that have, it's a region, basically. It's a part of Canada that has been very underrepresented in sports in the history of this country. Soccer or any other sport, it's a place where not a lot of professional sports have taken roots, and it's junior hockey to some level, but not necessarily professional sports that have become success. And the rise of the potential Canadian Premier League might give an opportunity for a team in the Maritimes, maybe in Halifax in the region, maybe branded as Nova Scotia or Maritimes, branded how you want. But it is an interesting factor to have a high quality, maybe not first division, but at least an outlet for products of maritime soccer to have a place to play.
Yeah, look, as I've said before, the population base out there is much smaller than other parts of the country. It's generally a little bit of an older population as well. Now, Halifax is a notable exception in the Maritimes. If you're young and you're in the Maritimes, you're usually in Halifax, which meant, of course, I lived in Fredericton, and I was young when I lived in Fredericton. Not so much now, but then I was. Anyway, it is a vibrant city in a lot of ways, especially in the summer. If you've ever been to Halifax, and a lot of Canadians have, down on the ocean there in the harbor, it can be quite exciting. Lots of traditional Celtic music will be played, and people will be drinking beers and enjoying themselves. It has the potential, I think, when you consider some of the sort of peripheral activities around soccer in North America with the supporters groups. I think you could have a lot of fun out there with the Atlantic group. And I think that I do, as someone who has a soft spot for the Maritimes, I'll never live there again, but I do have a soft spot for them, would enjoy the opportunity to go back and visit a couple times a year to watch a game out there. I do worry about the sponsorships and things like that, but we'll see. To continue on with the story, though, pragmatically, there is the Atlantic Sports Group, which they own the Mooseheads, and the Halifax Convention Center, which is where they play. I believe they control that as well. They've hosted events like the Scottish Tournament of Heart, which is a big curling tournament. Don't laugh, Americans. It's very big in this country.
No, I believe it's huge. It's huge.
Yeah, this is a major event in this country with a lot of need to work around TV and things like that. So it is an annual. It's a Canadian Women's Curling Championship is what it is. They might have hosted a Briar too. I'm not 100% sure on that. I'm sure they probably have at some point. But at any rate, what I'm just getting at, and big concerts too. They bring in as big a concert as they can get in Halifax. And again, because of the population base, it's sometimes a struggle. But they have really upped the game in the past decade or so. When before, really Atlantic Canada, they might get, Rita McNeil would tour around for a little while, and that would be about it. Rita's not with us anymore, is she? I'm not too sure. Anyway, but nonetheless, they did. That's kind of where a lot of people that are listening are going, "Who the hell are you talking about?" Which says it all. That's really the illustration I'm pointing. They're getting some bigger bands out now and things like that, and it's all part of this group. So they're allegedly the team, the people behind this, and they have told. This is kind of hearsay at this point, but what I'm hearing is that they have told the supporters out there that they plan to finance a 8,000 seat stadium by themselves. They won't be asking for public money. This 8,000 seat stadium will probably be built on the site of where the city of Halifax is building the fields and the light fixtures and the scoreboard, which then would be used for community use. So obviously there would be a bit of a mixed use thing that would happen in this. That is likely going to be the reality of any of these new builds that happen around this stadium. And you know what? Having been to Halifax, and Husky Stadium is the only stadium of any substance out there. It probably only sits about 4,000 and it's falling apart. So this would be very useful for the city of Halifax. It's in the right level of size for that area. I would hope they might be able to expand it eventually up to maybe 15,000 or something like that. It's not going to accommodate a CFL team, so you don't have to worry about that side of things. I do believe they're talking about turf, but that's more of a climate issue, Kevin. Just 8,000. Is that the right number in your mind for a stadium at the start of this?
I think it is. I think it does make sense. If you're looking at attendance in comparable league in the world, so that would be maybe not championship in England, but go league to League One. Maybe go to USL, United States. And 8,000 is a very viable fan base, potential ticket sales for that level of a sports franchise, and it has its ups and downs. It has its positive, negatives. There's a certain limit of revenue it can bring in for tickets and concessions because it's 8,000. It's not 20. You don't have and it's not all of the 8,000 are going to get a beer at the stadium and all that. So you do have a certain limit of the revenue stream, but you can find ways to, if the buzz is there, there's momentum with 8,000. it's not necessarily difficult to go to 10,000, especially the way soccer stadiums are built nowadays. If you're looking at Stade Saputo or BMO Field, adding stands takes one off season and you're okay with it. So it is possible to do this in the future, but I think 8,000 is a right level, right size to start, because it's 8,000. It's not 1,000. It has some enough to create an atmosphere, enough to create a happening. And 8,000 in a city like Halifax, I think it's viable. And the cost as well, the cost to build an 8,000 compared to 12,000, difference there as well. So the fact that it's 8,000 is probably the biggest size they can build, keeping the budget at a way that everybody can agree, and not necessarily having the government involved in a lot of money given to the project. You can do it by yourself if you keep the cost low.
Yeah, and look, I look at an 8,000 seat stadium, and I think about where some of these Western teams will likely play. You look at, they're going to likely share the CFL stadium, will block off seats and do things like that, and they could potentially get maybe more attendance. But I think that 8,000 in that packed stadium, to use the old Alouettes example, the Molson Stadium example, would be that it might actually help drive that team forward, because it'll be fun. There'll be a lot of people there. It'll be an event. It'll be something that people want to go to because it'll be fun, and you'll feel like you're part of something because you're packed in with 8,000. I was at an Ottawa Fury game in the early days when they played up at Carleton Stadium, and it was pretty packed in there, and it did feel like more of a game than what it later saw when you were in a half empty. This was a TD. What's the stadium called out there? TD Place or something?
No, TD Place. Yeah, the TD Place. Yeah, Tim Hortons is a new one in Hamilton, which maybe the future Steelers will play. That's another question. Duane, just to finish on Halifax, I'm happy though that we're hearing about Maritimes and Nova Scotia or New Brunswick being represented in the Canadian Premier League, because it's a worry that we both had, that this region of Canada might still be misrepresented in this project if nobody steps up. And gladly, apparently, somebody is stepping up.
Yeah, it's good to hear. And, I think that there was a lot of thought that if there was a Maritime team before, it would be in Moncton. And I always kind of wondered about that. The biggest population base in the Atlantic Canada, I shouldn't say in Atlantic Canada. Well, it is the biggest population base in Atlantic Canada. For those that don't know, the Maritimes are just the three provinces to the south. Atlantic Canada includes Newfoundland. It'd be awesome to have St. John's in there, and I would absolutely be going to travel up there. But at any rate, Moncton's small. It's only 100,000 or so. So even though it's in the middle and it's kind of a hub, is how they try and advertise that, I think it would be a real struggle, because you'd be asking people to drive. And at least in Halifax with 8,000, you could pretty much fill 8,000 just from Halifax. You wouldn't need to rely on people driving in from PEI or New Brunswick. You'd be happy to have a few, but you wouldn't be relying on them. Where I believe if you put the team in Moncton, that you would be pretty much relying on people making a drive into your team. Like, just the city of Moncton itself would probably only be able to put a couple thousand in. You'd have to have at least Fredericton and St. John coming up, and if not Halifax, and if not Charlottetown. And that's a big ask, especially for a new kind of team. Yeah, but the 8,000 too, just to finish the thought on that, it does, if that's the size they're looking for, and we kind of hope that, but we didn't know that, then that does put stadiums like, I don't know what they call it, but where the Rouge-Or play in Quebec City, that would put that on the table.
Perhaps in Université Laval, yeah.
Okay, thank you. It puts Tuffy Knight Stadium on in Kitchener-Waterloo. It would put TD Waterhouse Stadium on in London. Though that's the size of those places. These are CIS football stadiums, which generally are about 8,000. I know the stadium in Saskatoon is about that. I've been there before. It's a little older, but it certainly would fit about that and would work for that. I don't know the name of that, and I don't think you do either, Kevin. Do you? The Saskatoon Stadium.
Which one? No. Mosaic? No. Mosaic Stadium? Mosaic Field?
No. The Mosaic it's Regina. Saskatoon, I'm talking about where the University of Saskatchewan plays.
No, I don't.
Yeah, exactly. At any rate, but it puts those kind of places on the board. I think it would amuse me greatly as a longtime KW resident. My 10 years, the best 10 years of my university life. No, I'm kidding. It didn't take me 10 years to get my undergrad, but I did live in KW for a couple years after university as well. To have Tuffy Knight Stadium as the name of the stadium in the Canadian Premier League would amuse the hell out of me, because Tuffy Knight is this gruff Southern old football coach, like throw ball coach that I think probably has never watched a soccer game in his life. So that would amuse me a great deal if Tuffy Knight was a name synonymous with the Canadian Premier League moving forward. So go KW United, get into Tuffy Knight Stadium and make this thing happen. All right.
Yeah,
Kevin.
well, just 8,000. If you go across the board, it gives maybe a feasibility aspect a better chance. If you're looking at smaller cities or smaller region, if they look, okay, we have to pay to get this team, we have to get a stadium, but it's an 8,000 stadium. We can find use for it. It's not like we have a 40,000 stadium in the middle of nowhere in Manitoba that you don't know what to do with it majority of the time outside those close to 15 home days a season. No, yeah, 8,000 seems more feasible than regional communities can use it for concert venues or whatever possibility may be, entertainment venue. But no, it's an interesting size to have the league be viable and feasible at the same time.
Quick final thought on that. It also puts back on the table in my mind. You can take a bit of an aside here. The Toronto Wolfpack, that rugby league team that is starting in Toronto this spring, that's going to play in the English League. It's a fascinating experiment. I actually have tickets for it. I'm looking forward to talking about that. We may have a podcast on this if I can get my organization together. But nonetheless, they're playing at Lamport Stadium, which is just, if you've been to Toronto and you're not from here, but if you've been here before to BMO Field, you'll know that there's a stadium just north of it in Liberty Village. So very close to BMO Field. It's an older stadium, generally used for community use right now. Only one of the stands is really used. But if the Wolfpack are there and they're successful, there is a possibility that they may start to fix that facility up a little bit more. And if they do that, it would fit far more than 8,000. It would probably be about 12 to 15,000 venue. And I think that then might be a viable place to put a potential Toronto franchise in this Canadian Premier League. And I believe that if you put a Toronto franchise at Lamport and you priced it right, you might do okay with it. Just people that like soccer would come because it's very easy to get to. And that's an important consideration. And, right now, if you're talking about a team up in Vaughan and places like that, which people are, that's a tough place to get to by transit. Whereas Lamport, not really. You can just jump on the streetcar, on the King car, or the Harbor Front car. I can't talk today.
The 509, Duane. The 509 Harbor Front Lakefront. The guy from Montreal telling you about streetcar of Toronto.
It's a beautiful little route. I like doing that in the summer because it's right on the lake. Anyway.
Yeah, when it's actually working, when it's not like renovating for 20,000 months.
Oh, you're going to talk to me about the TTC and renovations? Okay. All right, let's take a break.
You are listening to Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
The Bits and Bites on Soccer Today. Duane, it's tonight, January 20th at Irene's Pub in Ottawa, St. Clair. Get your tickets. Go watch them. I wish I could.
If you are a longtime listener of Soccer Today and you are not at that pub, if you're in the Ottawa region, I'm not going to, I'll excuse people that live in, Vancouver. But if you're in the Ottawa region and you're not going to that show, come on. They're good Fury fans. They're on this show all the time. Get out there and watch St. Clair. All right, Kevin. Last week, we kind of were remiss. It happened after we did the show on Friday, and then this week sort of happened, and lots was going on, so we didn't get a chance to talk about it. We did speak that it was coming down the pipe, but we didn't confirm the names. There were 3 long-term members of the Canadian women's national team that did announce their retirement, their peer retirement last Friday. They will play their final game in Vancouver on February 4th, which is upcoming fast. Melissa Tancredi, which was not surprising. Ryan Wilkinson and Marie-Ève Not were the people that retired from. Yeah,
Marie-Ève Not.
Yes. Yeah, no, sorry. Yeah, I'll let the French guy say the French name. That's usually what I do, but I was in the middle of my conversation there, so I just kept going. Those 3 players, obviously, the first one, Melissa, obviously, is the one that's probably had the greatest impact overall. Although the other two were good soldiers for years. I don't want to dismiss their contribution, but Tancredi, of course, had her 2 Olympic performances where she stood up. So I think that when I think of Melissa Tancredi, and I'll let you jump in after this, I'm going to think Olympian more than anything else, because she had her greatest moments in the Olympic Games, in both bronze medals runs. A massive part of both of those teams. We criticized her inclusion leading up to Rio, and man, did we have egg in our face for the end of it. So
I think it was part of her game too, that chip on her shoulder, and made her play even better. She was an outspoken member of the Canadian women's national team and was, in a way, a model for younger players of how to handle yourself, always in a tip-top physical shape, and was able to provide great service for her country, like you mentioned, in both Olympics. But the chip on her shoulder, the way she used her passion in her play to make her even better in the biggest stage in the women's game, still the Olympics, and made her a not a legend in Canadian women's national team, but a great player that will be remembered.
Exactly. And as I said, Wilkinson, Yvonne, not, how do you say it again properly?
No. So like no.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I've always said it. I'm terrible at pronouncing French names. I know I am. That's why I let Kevin do it. Anyway, Amiens. Let's go with that. They were good players that played a big role for a long time, especially Amiens. She would always kind of come in and be parachuted in a lot of times when they needed cover back there. That's a tough role to play for any national team. So a very good soldier that I think that we need to also represent. All 3 women mid-30s now, 35, 34, and 34. They had nice, good runs. And I think that's a positive development too, that you have these 3 players retiring in their mid-30s now, because I think even just a decade ago, they would have been in their late 20s or mid-20s even when they were announcing retirements like this, whereas now there is enough opportunity for them to play into their 30s, and I think that's a positive development.
Well,
but the other part...
Sorry,
go ahead.
I was going to mention about Ryan Wilkinson, a underrated player for the national team for the last decade. She has been one of the best products of Montreal soccer, because she's from Montreal, and it has been she's from Quebec. I'm not necessarily sure she's from Montreal or not. She's from Quebec, and one of the best product Quebec soccer has ever created. Low-key player, but she's always there when it counted. Part of the bronze medal runs, and Ryan Wilkinson is an Olympian as well. Like you mentioned, they're all Olympian. They perform great, double medalists, back-to-back bronze. But outside of that, she represented Canada in the Algarve tournaments, the Cyprus tournaments of this world, and always did her best. And Ryan Wilkinson, for me, is one of the best products of Quebec soccer.
Yeah, 180 caps too. So that's not completely flopped that over.
That's what I mean, Duane. She was not just there for the Olympics and the biggest stages. She was there whenever her name was called.
Yeah, and obviously, you need those players, and a solid part of that spine for years, and all 3 women will be missed in this program. But at the same time, the program had essentially moved on from all 3 women as well, which is also a positive development. There is they're calling it like an identification camp is what they're calling it right now. But the the Canadian women are in camp. If you look at that camp roster, I'm not going to go into it in detail. There are 7 teenagers on it, including a 15-year-old. Someone pointed out that the 15-year-old, when she was born, Christine Sinclair had 20 international goals. So there is absolutely the youth. I know that's what makes Christine Sinclair.
Either tells that the girl is really young or Christine Sinclair is really old. I don't know which is which. But it does seem to have not a new generation. Well, new generation pushing the old and literally making the old either raise their game to stay in the game or being replaced by a younger, better player.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And I mean, I'll give John credit a lot of Herdman for this, to say that he continues to trust the teenagers, and Herdman does. My joke, if you didn't get that, Herdman trusts the teenagers, and I think that's a really positive development here. And it also shows that I think that, unlike the United States, a little bit more, we're a little bit more, because we have more room to move too, for sure. The U.S. is the best women's team in the world. But there tends to be like a pecking order and you have to go through stages to get on the U.S. women's national team, where it seems like Herdman and Canada are willing to like take flyers on kids and jump spots and to skip even like players that aren't even in college yet, let alone college players. And well, I kind of like that.
What you're saying is less politics?
Yeah, essentially. And, the U.S. women can afford that politics. They can overcome them because there's so much depth there, right? That they have so much skill that it's hard to, they're the old truth. And we say this up here about hockey all the time in Canada, but it is true in the U.S. women's side that if you could put like 3 U.S. women's teams in a World Cup and they'd all have a chance to win, right? So it's kind of easy for them to get around that. At any rate, I do like that. I was thinking that the other day. I was looking at during this announcement. They had photographs of London and of Rio, and as much as London was such a dramatic moment in Canadian soccer, and in the way it ended with Diana Matheson scoring that late goal against the Flow after France had done everything but score. There was a lot of sort of emotion around that. The first sort of major thing that Canadian soccer had done on the women's side ever, and the first thing period since 2000, right? Yeah. That there's a lot of emotion in that, but I think of Rio more fondly, and I think I always will, and it's because the overall performance just seemed like they deserved it more. So I've always felt that.
I agree with you, Duane. It's like the feeling I could explain for me when I look at London. It's the unexpected result. You saw everything happen in front of you. You got lucky when you needed to, and you had the good games when you needed to. And that led to a bronze medal. Let's face it. They had 2 great games in London. The last 2 they played. Outside of that, it was average. Finished 3rd in their group. Yeah. Let's not forget about that. If you go to Rio, they fought for every win. They deserved every ball, every goal. It was some games were total domination. We've seen the side of Canadian women's national team play different than before, with the young player included. A minute in the tournament, Canada scored. We were both jaw dropped. That's the type of moments we've seen in Rio. It was a more deserved performance for that bronze medal. It was not just 2 matches. It was the entire tournament.
Yeah, and they beat France and Germany in that tournament, which France in the knockout game. Of course, they did beat France for the bronze, but it was like kind of one of those absorb and strike on one counter attempt and take advantage of it thing in London. But no, nonetheless, we're rehashing old stuff now, but that's how I feel there. Let's move on quickly with a couple other items to end the Bits and Bytes segment here. Kevin talked about Target yesterday in Minnesota United. I really wouldn't have had much more to add other than a couple jokes about expansion teams and being targets and things like that. So
does that mean they have more time?
Maybe.
That's the Target part.
Well, there's the other joke going around yesterday too, is that this is great news for the Canadian teams because we all know that Target can't get anything right in Canada. So there you go.
They'll lose every game in Canada. No, they'll come in. They'll say they'll win. They'll say they'll be the best. And about 11 months after, when they can't get really their players across the border, they're going to go back home with the tail between their legs.
Well, Steven Sandor nailed it. And if you know that there's some great actual articles out there, if you like reading business journalism, there's a great article on what happened with Target. Just sort of Google like what went wrong with Target in Canada. You'll find it. I think it was in Canada Business or Canadian Business or something like that. Basically, they couldn't get their distribution networks right. Is what happened. Like they couldn't fill the shelves at stores.
Everything was empty. Yeah. It was good. Like I used to go there. There was one next to my place. It was amazing, but they never got it right.
Yeah. So anyway, the joke Steven Sandor made is that they'll show up for a game in Vancouver and the strips will be in Toronto, so they'll have to like play naked or something. And anyway,
like
be a different kind of game that
we meant well, but
there you go. All right. Anyway, to bring this to the point I was trying to make, there has been for those that don't know, technically speaking, TFC does not have a short sponsorship right now. Technically speaking, because by all accounts, it's fait accompli that BMO is coming back on for another few years. And this is a case of, this is the, we'll use our girlfriend analogies here. This is the girlfriend that was like, you were maybe a little bit overweight and you were on the couch a little too much. And she was like, I don't know. I don't think I'm not really feeling you that too much. So she broke up with you. And then you went out and you got really fit.
And by the time she says that, you got a new job, you're making money and you look awesome.
Yeah, and now she's like, maybe I'll come back.
Like,
so there you go.
No, it's like your girlfriend's about to dump you and you just win the jackpot. So she's like, maybe I'll stick around a little more.
Exactly. That's kind of what's happening here. BMO wasn't going to come back, but I think that they've seen the potential to come back again. So
Well, I think it has to do
you
to
don't need.
just when they took that decision, Duane, it was a rise of basketball in Toronto, their first playoff year 3 years ago, where they had a lot of potential, a lot of growth. And BMO, as a sponsor of the Toronto Raptors, had that all basketball culture starting to grow. And when you talk about a sponsor, it's not just what you see on the kit or on whatever. It goes with the entire culture of marketing with the company, with some clubs involved. You see TV commercials with the players. You go to the store, they have footballs giveaway, and stuff like that. It's all included, and they wanted to switch that to basketball, and then TFC got on a great playoff run.
Yeah. Look, it's all part of their growth strategy too. The Bank of Montreal, I believe, is the third biggest bank in Canada. It's behind the Royal Bank and which is, of course, by virtue of its name, you could understand would be like the old bank, the traditional bank that's very stat, and it's the Olympic team sponsor, things like that. And here in Toronto, anyway, TD is massive. TD Waterhouse in the States. It's just TD Canada Trust here in Canada, and it's like on every street corner, quite literally. There's about
Literally
5
open
of them
like 24 hours, basically.
Yeah,
you can go on
those
Sundays. Like you can go on Sundays to the bank. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, so I believe that BMO, their strategy is to try and get in get in people's minds, and this is part of it. So obviously TFC is back on people's minds in Toronto. So as a bank that wants to grow and overtake the big two, it's interested in doing that. All right. Final thought on this before we'll wrap and take a break and have a little bit of the games of the week look and look at a little bit at the African Cup of Nations. We're still looking for someone to cover that. It's been a busy week. Anyway,
we'll send a little feelers out there to have somebody for next week.
Yeah, the knockout game, the African Cup of Nations doesn't really pick up to the knockout round anyway. It can get a bit during the group stage. Jermaine Jones called Tim Howard out yesterday. Basically said that he called his comments. We talked about them on 2 days ago show. Called his comments talking about how they shouldn't be playing players that weren't born in the United States. Called them dangerous, and that's kind of interesting. And again, it speaks to what I was saying the other day that beyond whether you agree or not, or all the nativism stuff, the whole thing is he has to play with these guys. And like now, Tim Howard and Jermaine Jones, are they going to get along in the locker room? I'm sure they'll figure it out on some kind of professional level, but and Jermaine Jones is hardly a beacon of good behavior sometimes either.
Well,
but
yeah,
nonetheless,
I talked about it yesterday, Duane. He's a new player for the LA Galaxy. If you're looking at Jermaine, he's not a DP, by the way, as well. If you're looking at Jermaine Jones, the last two teams he has parted ways with, he hasn't just leave the team. He has blown up the bridge while crossing it.
Yeah, precisely. So nonetheless, it's some interesting stuff there, and it continues. I don't know why they continue to have these conversations down there. Like, just shut up. Like, God, it's not going to do anything good. No one agrees with them, right? Like, you look at the reaction online, and the soccer community, I'm sure there might find some soccer fans out there that do agree with them, but by and large, on the online communities tend to be pretty much open to the idea of just making the team better however they can. That's not even political. It's just pure sports want to win. So these comments never go over well. So my suggestion to future and current U.S. men's national team, and we know they must all listen, would be to shut up. Keep your opinion to yourself in this particular case. Nothing good is going to come of you saying it out loud. Anyway, Kevin, do you have anything to add to the bits and bites before we
just talked about L.A. Speaking of L.A., Jelle Van Damme signed a new contract for the LA Galaxy, becoming a designated player for 2017. And so two designated players so far, Giovanni Dos Santos and Jelle Van Damme. Who is going to be the third one? Because, we all know the Galaxy. They're going to have three DPs. Will Jonathan Dos Santos, Giovanni's brother, come play for the Galaxy? This is the latest rumor coming from Los Angeles.
And Chicharito is being heavily linked to LAFC now, too. So that's
a great move.
That's not that surprising.
Well, we talked about it last week, Duane.
Yeah.
We talked about Chicharito. I see Chicharito as a potential game changer for the Spanish speaking community that would love to have a Mexican legend play for an MLS club. It would be a type of Beckham, but with the Mexican national team fan all across North America situation.
Fair enough. All right. Final thank Gabriel Jesus has officially signed with Manchester City. If you haven't seen that. And Pep said today in his press conference that he is fit and ready to go for the weekend. Any Portuguese listeners out there, let me know if I'm saying that right. My understanding is it's Jesus. Jesus kind of. It's not Jesus. It's not Jesus. It's kind of some weird little other sound that my English tongue struggles with. But let me know if I'm saying that right.
Oh, and Costa's available. Diego Costa's available for Chelsea. The spat is over. Him and Conte talked, and he wants to play for Chelsea.
Chesty FC. That would be a very popular team.
That's what happens when it's my coffee's like I need coffee.
All right, Friday, boys. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll look at the games in the weekend and have a bit of a recap on the AFCON.
You're listening to Soccer Today on SPN Radio. You can find the on-demand version of this very show on iTunes, Stitcher, Feedburner, Podbay Player, Podbean, anywhere you get your podcasts under the Sports Podcasting Network feed. Subscribe to our YouTube page to make sure you never miss a live show talking about soccer today, the MLS postgame show, open lines after dark, 5 Rings Daily during the Olympics. Make sure you subscribe and give us a follow on Twitter at SportsPodNet and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network.
And welcome back. Real quickly, I'm not going to go in detail on this. I haven't had a lot of opportunity to watch a lot of African Cup of Nations. I've seen a bit of it here and there. I've seen some highlights, but we'll just go through the groups real quick as we enter the final match day stuff. In Group A, Cameroon and Gabon right now are in the advanced states, although Burkina Faso is right on is tied with Gabon in points. So that will come down to the final match day where those two teams play each other. It looks like Cameroon might be able to find its way through. Or I said that wrong. Burkina Faso is playing Guinea-Bissau in the final game. That should be a fairly easy touch, whereas Cameroon and Gabon play. So it looks pretty good for the darlings of African football to get through on that one, Kevin. Just jump in if you have anything to add to any of this.
It's Group B. What a weird result so far in Group B. Algeria struggling, not a win yet in 2 games, 1 draw, 1 loss. They lost 2-1 to Tunisia just the other day. And a surprise struggle for Algeria, a team that if you're looking at the composition with the Mahrez and Slimani, this team should be a lot higher in the standing, should have got at least a few more goals and have the few victories. 4 goals conceded, 3 goals scored. Right now, they are only because of 1 goal that they scored more. That's why they're not 4th. They're really struggling so far in the Africa Cup of Nations. And Algeria, for me, a team that was one of the favorites to go deep in this tournament, right now on the brink of getting booted out in the group stage.
Yeah, they're going to need to rely on Zimbabwe to get a result against Tunisia in the final group stage game. They might have cut a little bit of a lucky break, Algeria, that is, by being drawn up against Senegal, who is through on 6 points right now. So they may rest some of their players, and that might be a bit of a break for them.
Yeah, but the thing is, Senegal doesn't have a lot of play. One thing that I was talking about to a few of my African friends yesterday, Duane, and they're actually from Morocco and Algeria. So I was talking to them about the tournament, and they're like, it's always weird with that tournament because our best players, they come play, but they don't want to get injured for the continuation of their club league just a few weeks down the road. So they take it seriously, they go all out, but some of them have a certain they go 80%, let's just put it this way. That's how it was described to me. So it might be not all the players, but just few of them. And if you look at players that were struggling so far this year, like you said, like Slimani and Mahrez, maybe that explains why Algeria is struggling.
All right, Group C and Group D have yet to go through to match day 2 yet, so kind of pointless to put much of a conversation on that. You can watch Ivory Coast and the Congo play today. Congo won its first game. Ivory Coast drew Tongo in its first game. Morocco and Tongo will play in the second game. And then tomorrow you will have your final match day 2 with Ghana, Mali, and Egypt and Uganda to hook it up. So we'll see what goes there. Ghana with a win in their first match. Mali and Egypt tied. Uganda on 0 points. So that's the Africa Cup of Nations touch-in right now. Let's move to the Premier League to end the part of the show today where Kevin and I are together. The interview's coming up just in a minute or so. What's jumping out at you on the weekend? What obviously City Spurs is something that a lot of people will be looking at for a lot of different reasons. But any other games that are jumping out at you, Kevin?
Well, not necessarily. When you have West Ham, they go to Borough. For West Ham, it's a chance to get another good result after the great win last weekend. Even though they didn't have Payet and they want to move on from the Payet situation, a win on the road against Borough would go a long way for West Ham. So that's interesting. The battle for relegation is what is really catching my attention right now. I have a lot of clubs, if you go from Leicester down on the table, are all going to battle hard. Hull City is having a tough game. They're going to Stamford Bridge against Chelsea. It's going to be very difficult for Hull and their new manager, Marco Silva, to get a result. But what the word coming out of Hull, Duane, is training sessions with Marco Silva. There's no lackadaisical attitude. It's not an option anymore.
Allowed?
Yeah, no, exactly. Allowed. Exactly. You're not allowed to. He has a very strong leash, and apparently he's a type of coach who's going to let you know if you don't train the way he wants you to train. So for Hull City and Marco Silva, it might be a potential upset for Chelsea. I doubt it, but they have a very difficult match. Leicester on the road to Southampton can get a result. And in that relegation battle, Sunderland, West Brom. If Sunderland goes on the road and get another result, Sunderland could maybe not talk about how safe they are, but at least they're not as deep as they were in the first 9 weeks of the season where they could not get a win.
All right, real quickly, we do have to get the interview so that we can keep the show running at time, and I did promise it to run at 20 to the hour. Liverpool-Swansea should be interesting only in the fact that it's the best offense in the Premier League versus the worst defense. So bet the over, and a sneaky good game, I think, will be Bournemouth-Watford, because both those teams can be are better than I think people think, Bournemouth especially, and I look forward to that. Might be the game I watch at 10 a.m. Kevin. On that note, I'm going to say goodbye on the day. Kevin will run the interview now for the interview for the D3 League. A lot of interesting stuff in there to unpack. On Monday, maybe if you have any questions further, we can talk about it more. Just send them our way. But I'll say goodbye on the show, Kevin, and I'll let you take it from here, run that interview, and maybe we'll just probably slide out of the show at that point. But your call there, so you can say goodbye if you want now if you want to.
You are listening to SPN Radio, powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
And welcome back to Soccer Today. Duane Rollins here. Joining me on the line from British Columbia is Chris Cerroni. He is the Director of Soccer Development for BC Soccer. I have Chris on the line because I want to talk about an exciting development that has come forth this week. That is BC's plans to create a standards-based Division III level league. Chris, thanks for taking some time tonight.
Duane, thanks for having me on board.
Development issues are always of interest to our listeners quite a bit. And you know, a lot of people here, we talk about League One Ontario, we talk about the PLSQ a lot on this show. Tell us just sort of what your vision is on an overview of this BC D3 league.
Yeah, it's been a work in progress for the last 18 months. We've had a committee that's focused on how do we put a plan of action to actually make a amateur soccer league that's run professionally within BC Soccer, to provide a platform for players of high performance standard at the U18 and adult age group. So it's been something that we've been focusing on to compare, if you like, with the Ontario and Quebec level of play with their leagues in place. It is a directive from Canada Soccer, and 18 months of research, we're really pleased to be at a stage where we can announce the league concept and then call for application to see who may be interested and be viable to actually operate a franchise for this league.
Could you just sort of go over some of the standards, some of the things that you'll be looking for potential franchises, clubs in this league?
Yeah, the standards we're looking for really against CSA LTPD stage 6 training to win. Currently in BC, we don't provide high performance environment. So the league is really looking to provide that environment for players that are coming from university, that are coming from the current adult platform that's provided at this stage in BC. So for a franchise to provide that, there'll be technical standards that they'll have to provide, which focuses on training to game ratio, focuses on the qualification, certification of the coaches, and how that platform is provided for those players during the season. But more importantly than the technical side, if you like, we've got to see if there's actually hunger, desire, and the ability of people in the game that would be willing to put up a considerable amount of money to make this viable. And really that is because we want to try and raise the standard at this level of play.
We'll speak to that a little bit. I did speak to someone involved in close to League One Ontario, and they were just curious about what your decision to require the amount of financial backing there. What is the thinking behind that? If you could just expand a bit on that a little bit more.
Yeah, one thing we want to make sure of is this isn't a flash in the pan, a one-off season. We want to try and have some longevity to it so that there's opportunity to build, expand, and really make this a cornerstone of the pathway in BC. And with that, if we have entities that come in and come in 1 year and then financially they can't sustain over a long period of time, it doesn't provide that consistency and continuity within that platform of play. So the purpose of that is really to say, look, if you're committed, we're committed, and we'd like to see that for a 3-year period.
Yeah, fair enough. Can you just sort of paint a picture of what the system looks like now and where this league will fit in and improve the current system?
Yeah, currently, if we look at the youth system moving into the adult system, we have our grassroots clubs that provide playing environments from U6 to U18 and also into the adult game as well. But more so, this is focusing on what high performance opportunities do we provide. So similar to Ontario and Quebec, we have a high performance league that caters for U13 to U18 players. And what we're finding is if they graduate into the local professional club, the Vancouver Whitecaps, fantastic. Other opportunities are university. And what we're looking at is how do we provide a platform that youth players that potentially don't move into the professional ranks because currently they're limited can have an opportunity to continue their development and give potentially opportunity if they develop within that environment for a larger opportunity moving forward. So it's really trying to connect high performance youth environments connected to that adult high performance environment, which would be regional tier 3 league, which would sit underneath the Whitecaps MLS, the Whitecaps USL, and that currently would be that level of play in BC. As you're aware, there are potential opportunities with the Canadian Professional League in place as well. So when that comes into play, that would sit above this league moving forward.
Yeah, and of course the Canadian Premier League, if that in fact is the name, it has driven a lot of change, I think, recently, and a lot of thinking. Was that factor in driving BC soccer forward to get this thing done and get this thing moving, to the fact that you need a place for these kids to develop so they can make that jump? Was the Canadian Premier League coming a factor in the decision?
I think it will complement it. If it comes into existence, this will be the higher raised standards of amateur play below that professional and semi-professional environment. So really it's identifying that we have a gap currently in BC for migrating or graduating players at U18 into the adult game. We have some very good environments of play, and we're just trying to target how do we best improve that area, and this is one platform that we believe we can achieve that, which complements the current environments that we have in play.
All right. What I put out that I was speaking to you tonight. I put it out on my Twitter feed to get some questions, as I said, and there were a couple that came up pretty consistently. And the one that came up most consistently was the length of the season. Some people concerned that 3 months might be too short of a time. It's been sort of flippantly called a BC PDL, so to speak. Are you comfortable with that 3 months? And can you sort of explain what the thinking behind it is?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is this is new territory. We're looking at first seeing who has some hunger for this opportunity, and that, as you're aware, that comes up with some financial resources to make this happen. So we were looking at a shorter season to see if we can get some viable level of play and franchises that can exist at that level. There's definitely opportunity to explore if we get some continuity and it becomes a mainstream in the system here. That could we expand the season? We would definitely be open to exploring that. But another factor came into play was where are the players, or who are the players that would populate this, and who would potentially pay money to come and see these players. So we had to consider what's the player pool, who's this for, and it's a combination of university players that are currently playing in BC, Canada, and the US that might come back to BC for the summer period. It's a combination of current players that are already playing in the adult leagues that we currently have in system, and then it's potential U18 players that might graduate into this environment as well. So it was a combination of what's the player pool. Let's not run before we can walk, and see if we can really gain some traction and see if there's opportunity to develop this moving forward.
BC is unlike other provinces in Canada in that primarily a lot of your programs run through the winter months because your climate's a little bit nicer than it is in other parts of the country. There was some concern voiced out there that perhaps having this through the summer might reduce the type of quality players that you get into the league. Do you have any concerns about that?
No, I think it's an opportunity for players that want to gain more experience, gain more opportunity, and hopefully with the technical standards we've put in place, we'll create an environment that will really raise the standard of the game here. So, if you're a player that is currently in BC and you're looking for opportunities and want to dream and progress, it's a platform that could potentially help with that.
Here in Ontario with League One Ontario, which is a league that I have an affiliation with, they also look at the other two prongs of the system. They want to improve the overall club infrastructures and coaching that happens at the club level, and they also view League One Ontario as a great platform for young referees to develop. Am I right to assume that BC Soccer would look at this league in the same way to provide opportunities for both young coaches and young referees?
Yeah, it's a great point, Duane. It's a combination. The focus is on players, but also that comes in with administrators being challenged at the higher level, as you highlighted, referees and coaches as well. One of the areas that we are focusing on is how do we, with certification, have coaches that gives them an opportunity to have a carrot to explore getting the A license, as an example, because this could be a platform that moving forward coaches will need their A license to operate within. But it's a combination. The focus is player, but it also comes in with club franchise development as well, and gaining more attention. As we're having this conversation today on soccer in BC.
Where do you envision that the initial teams will come from? Is it, I know with League One, again, to go back to the example I'm familiar with, it started mostly in the GTA, in the Greater Toronto area, and is starting to slowly spread out to other parts of the province now. Do you anticipate that the initial launch will be mostly in the Lower Mainland, or are you hoping to see something that's spread a little bit further around the province?
Yeah, I mean, it's unknown at this stage. We've opened a call for application across the province. We've highlighted some local areas with populations that could potentially provide this type of platform and gain a fan base. We're just really sitting back, waiting to see who's interested. We'd like to think that we get numerous amount of interest from the Lower Mainland within Vancouver, but we'd also hope that this is a great opportunity for areas on the island, northern BC, in the Okanagan, the Kootenays, and the Fraser Valley, where there could be lots of opportunity to put the flag in the ground, if you like, and have a franchise in those locations.
It's probably early times, but the other question that came up a lot when I asked for input was whether or not you've had any conversations with Ontario, Quebec about joining them into some kind of interprovincial competition. Of course, Ontario and Quebec play for the Interprovincial Cup every year right now. There's hope that might launch that team onto a berth in the Canadian Championship. Do you hope that the BC or are looking for the BC team to be involved in that competition as well?
Yeah, I mean, across the country, the CSA are looking to help the provinces in having these type of platforms, province to province, and a natural progression would be if we can get this up and running, there's continuity and consistency. How do we then look to link that in with existing environments across the country? So it's, again, an opportunity that can definitely be explored.
Women, that would be the other natural question. Obviously, this is going to start on the men's side. Is the long vision to eventually get this to a women's side as well?
Yeah, absolutely. There's lots of potential to expand this into female soccer and provide more opportunities there. I think the reality is, with this being a new venture, it's unknown territory. As I said before, we'd rather walk and make sure that we do our due diligence to get to where we'd like to, rather than really put out a splash and shoot too high and not get some foundation and an area that we could build upon. So that is definitely an area that would be targeted as a opportunity to soccer in high performance for the females as well.
One area BC soccer has occasionally been, I don't know if criticized is the right way to put it, but has been questioned about is whether the Whitecaps have too much of a monopoly on the development platform out there, that too much goes through the Whitecaps system. I'm wondering whether you feel that in having this league might create some competition for the Whitecaps that could potentially drive them to be even better.
Yeah, I think the structure we have in place for the pathway, the reality is we have one professional club in the province, and the aim for any grassroots player graduating into high performance is how do we get them into the Whitecaps program that within the residency on the male side and the Rex program on the female side, where we are in partnership with them, they can provide the best environment for development for that player. Some of the resources that they have, the attention to detail, we have to get those players into that environment. In an ideal world, we would have more of those environments within the province. And one day that may happen. But with the progression of the regional tier 3, it's what can we affect? And there is a level below the Whitecaps that we can affect and provide a bigger base of players that potentially can graduate into professional opportunities.
All right, just to wrap it up, you've just sort of explained for anyone that's out there listening in British Columbia that might be interested in becoming involved with this, a club or whatever. Could you just sort of explain the details of how they go about reaching out and getting an application for BC Soccer to look at? Yeah, there's an announcement that we've shared on our website. And what we're looking for is a pre-application process. So first, if anyone's interested, they can go on our website, read the information. We have the Regional Tier 3 Operations Manual and Technical Standards document available, and we have a Regional Tier 3 information package available. But there's a link on the website that they can then fill their initial interest. There's a brief outline of questions so that we can determine if this is a serious application, and then we will then go through taking all those that have logged their information down and start to go through the process of, right,
Now we need to acquire more information, and that will be a proposal from that entity against some criteria that will determine if they can deliver against the franchise.
All right, well, Chris, I think that all soccer fans in all parts of the country wish BC Soccer great success in this endeavor. I think we'd like to see this in all provinces eventually, but certainly having it in the three biggest for now, starting in 2018, is a great start to turning around some of the issues that have plagued Canadian soccer over the year. And again, we wish you great luck in that, Chris. Thanks again.
Duane, thanks very much for your time.
And until next time on Soccer Today, well, have a great soccer. You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.